I'm tracking 5 crypto plays with hard reasons for doing well through the rest of 2025 and well into 2026. These are some of my top plays based on strong fundamental business developments, fresh money coming in, new doors opening, and products people can actually use, which you can't be shocked anymore, but that's pretty rare in crypto. I'll reveal each one as we go so you can catch the setup, not just the ticker. Now for our first crypto, big regulated buyers are active. US spot funds for a leading smart contract asset now hold over 5% of this crypto's entire supply. And they've seen days with eye-popping inflows. When that kind of demand stacks up, price really doesn't need much to run, and I do expect this crypto to do extremely well into 2026. On the second crypto. Now for our second crypto, this is one of the fastest cryptos in all of the world and is also used most consistently. What's interesting is that it's also listed with the CME, which is the largest derivatives markets in the world. However, it still has one catalyst that can push this thing over the edge, and that institutional demand will likely drive the price to not only new all-time highs, but potentially even 2, 3, 4, 5x. On this third crypto, a high stakes bidding war is going down where even BlackRock is involved in order to see who is going to issue the stablecoin for the fastest growing derivatives trading crypto hub on the planet. And this all goes down on September 14th. We have major players like Paxos, Athena, Frax, Sky, Maker, Agora, Native Markets, and Open Eden. And when you have that many major players bidding to control this stablecoin, that speaks of the business model that they have in place, the revenues that they're bringing in, and a lot of that is actually going to drive the price action because they are creating incentives for token buybacks and more. Not only that, this ecosystem just logged a record $106 million in August revenue just from the perpetual futures. So that combo, a new stablecoin, a proven fee business model and structure, and more is why this one is easily one to watch on this breakout. And for this fourth crypto, we have a move-based layer 1 blockchain that just plugged Bitcoin liquidity straight into its DeFi stack, which is now live. In other words, Bitcoin will be live on this chain. And yes, it's grown like crazy as its TVL hit records over the summer. Plus, there is more collateral and more apps, and they aim to be the biggest gaming ecosystem in all of blockchain. And so far, they've been doing really well at it, which means that all of the flows that will enter this space will likely be stickier and stick around, which will drive more economic activity and the price higher. Now for our fifth crypto and the final crypto we're talking about, this is a culture-driven project which shipped a MasterCard debit card across 31 European countries and launched a 60-day US TV campaign for its flagship game. But not only that, they offer so much more. And they've been executing at a level that most cryptos could never even dream of. So when we talk about this being live on mainnet, real world spend, mainstream eyeballs, this can turn attention into loads of holders. And as we get more holders, we tend to see the price go up. So stick with me because I'll be covering the exact headlines for each of the cryptos that I mentioned, the levels that I care about, and then reveal every single one as we get into them. Plus, the two that I think are going to outrun the field in 2026. Then close to the end, I'll give some honorable mentions to another few. I won't cover all of the fundamentals for these, but just ones that I believe are going to do pretty well into 2026 as well. That just didn't make the list because it would have made the video far too long. Also, if you're looking to hold crypto and not sell early, which would create a taxable event, but instead aim to borrow against that crypto that you hold to have more access to capital for all sorts of opportunities, check this out.
Have you built a crypto portfolio over $1 million but want to access your wealth without selling any of your coins? Well, imagine unlocking up to 85% of your portfolio's value to fund ventures like real estate, to buy other projects in the crypto space that are undervalued compared to the projects that you currently hold, or to diversify into different DeFi yield opportunities. That way you can live on the interest without selling any of your crypto. Well, We've partnered with a leading global office offering non-recourse crypto loans for investors with portfolios starting at $1 million. The same company that is trusted by the world's largest institutions and investors because, as you already know, the billionaires don't sell their crypto, they borrow against it. So if you're ready to unlock up to 85% of your portfolio's value without selling any of your coins and you have a portfolio with at least $1 million, then email us at team@bullrunners.com. You're going to see our email contact in the description below, and we'll get you connected with the company that has helped clients like ours north of $100 million borrow against their crypto without selling any of it. So reach out to start a conversation with our team right now at team@bullrunners.com, and we'll talk to you soon.
So head on over to your email and shoot us an email if that sounds like you or is interesting. Without further ado, as always, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel, my friend. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PauliDeFi. The first crypto that I do want to cover, which I believe is going to do extremely well into this year and likely through 2026, is none other than Ethereum. Now, I understand that's not a new crypto. It's not something really sexy and exciting relative to the majority of these altcoin videos that you might watch. However, it's been performing extremely well. And in terms of relative strength, it looks a lot stronger now than virtually all other major market cap cryptos, except for one other on the list. So when we look at Ethereum, yes, it's a large crypto. Yes, it's currently sitting at a $500 billion market cap. But just like Bitcoin and the services and the products that it provides, it could easily hit a $2 trillion market cap, making the price of Ethereum at least $16,000 to $20,000. Now imagine buying one Ethereum at $4,300 and seeing that thing go to $16,000. And this is because treasury companies have been buying the crap out of Ethereum, which recently printed a new all-time high. And I get a lot of people might look at that and say, whoa, that's kind of expensive. I should have been buying it at 24. And the reality is hindsight is always 2020. The first best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. What I will say is when you see a large crypto break for some new all-time highs, there's literally thin air above. It means we don't know how high it can go. The sky's the limit. There's no overhead sell pressure. And when there's only buyers, things get really exciting. So right now we have an opportunity where it's been cooling off quite a bit. And over the last basically half of a year, going back to April, this thing has been on an absolute tear. Now where I get really excited, okay, even just looking at the daily price action, you can see that we're failing or struggling to break back below $4,200. We're currently sitting at $4,300, just about to have that 20 EMA cross back below the 10 EMA, which would be very bullish. And arguably, when we see the price break above $4,500, this thing looks like it's ready to run. Now, what's been a real driver of this? It's not just the fact that the majority of stablecoins are issued on Ethereum, or the fact that it's the largest layer 1 blockchain with the most adoption in terms of sheer mass or institutions, as US spot Ethereum ETFs now hold over 5% of the total Ethereum supply. And now what's important about this is not the fact that it looks like a small percentage. It's the fact that less and less Ethereum is in the hands of retailers. Retailers are typical of having weaker hands. However, institutional players or institutional players who do it on behalf of their clients tend to be stronger hands. So less and less of the supply available for retailers is actually a very good thing for the price action of something like Ethereum. And again, you have to remember that the demand has obviously been there because otherwise the price wouldn't be up tremendously. That said, even from a relative strength perspective, this thing is massively up compared to the majority of cryptos, which are currently down over the last couple of weeks. Ethereum has held its range really, really well, hasn't even dumped back down to that 10 EMA on a weekly time frame. And to make matters even better, we can see that we have a crazy amount of support going all the way back into May of 2021, where we saw a resistance once, then we saw a bull trap or a fake out where it broke back down to lows of about $800 before rallying back up to $4,000 $10,000 once, twice, 3 times. And on that very second break above this key level, it's going to be very difficult for Ethereum to go lower than between 3,900 down to like 3,800. I believe if it does, those are going to be really good dip buying opportunities into the next leg up. But whenever I see a pattern like this that looks very similar to a cup and handle, it's not textbook because of this breakdown right here. It's still going to be a very strong pattern considering this is a very long range. So whenever we get long ranges like this, okay, the trend being up over a longer period of time, and we're talking many years, again, 2021, typically the longer the breakout, the stronger the breakout. And so I expect this thing to run well into 2026. In my very conservative case, I could easily see Ethereum hitting $10,000. Second on my list is none other than Solana. Solana has already been listed with its futures contracts on the CME group, which is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. They kind of just rebranded into this, but these guys are the leading and the largest derivatives market on the planet. And by the way, when you look at the money or the total amount of money in derivatives, it is far larger than literally every other market in the world. So the fact that now people can trade derivatives or futures on Solana in the largest derivatives market in the world is huge. And this happened back in March of this year. However, price action kind of struggled through those months, especially into April. But since that point in time, Solana also looks like it's on a tear. So much so that even the CME group on X mentioned that their crypto futures suite just surpassed $30 billion in notional open interest for the very first time, with Solana and XRP leading the way alongside Ethereum. Now, this isn't something that I'm going to spend too much time on, but it's obvious that you've heard of Solana quite often. But I'll show you on the chart why this is looking extra good right now through the end of the year, where our ranges of resistance and support are, where I think this thing could go. But even when you look at social trends virtually all the time, you'll notice that even Bitcoin and Ethereum are not on the list when it comes to this analysis tool called Sentiment in terms of what's trending and what people are talking about. But virtually every time I come in here, you'll every now and then see a crypto that very few people talk about, GME here or Linnea, or maybe they just got a lot of traction and attention because of some major announcement or news that came out that day. But generally speaking, you don't see many of these on here every day, whereas Solana I virtually always see as a trending crypto, which means yes, people are talking about it, but they're also investing in it and getting involved in their DeFi protocols and all sorts of DeFi activities taking place on there. As you can see, Solana, according to DeFi Llama, is the second largest blockchain by total value locked at $12 billion. And this is why I mentioned Ethereum. Look at this, is institutional. When we have $91 billion of DeFi TVL or decentralized finance, that is huge. The second largest being Solana at 12.31 is also huge. And that is actually bigger than all of the DeFi in Bitcoin. So the majority of Bitcoin is actually just bought and held as spot, whereas these two have real use cases aside from being a digital gold, right? Solana and Ethereum act more like marketplaces where you can build all sorts of cool dApps, protocols, and you name it. And even when we look at the bridged TVL, it's still really, really large. But here is where things get extra exciting. When we talk about the total amount of volume traded between Ethereum and Solana, most money is parked on Ethereum. However, the majority of money is actually traded on Solana, as it has more volume in 24 hours consistently than Ethereum. In other words, people might have a lot of money on Ethereum, but they're not actively trading it or using it. Whereas on Solana, we have 4 billion. So when you look at the actual on-chain fees, Solana is more profitable in a 24-hour period than Ethereum at a fraction of its size. This is what makes Solana such a sleeper, even though you might have heard of it, you might have invested it in the past. Right now, we are at a crucial inflection point where this thing is really going to fly. So looking at Solana, we are currently sitting at a $121 billion market cap. And if we saw this thing at least 5x, the price of Solana would still be about under 1 trillion, which I could see being very reasonable into a major bull market cycle that deviates from the norm into 2026. And that would put it at over $1,000+, likely more than that. But again, that is me being conservative, even down to the $800 level. In terms of the actual technicals, fundamentals, from a weekly perspective, you can see that again, we had our all-time high in November of 2021, looking very similar to that of Ethereum. And we have a decent long range of resistance here between 260 all the way down to essentially $212. And now we're popping right back up for the very first time since January of this year. So from a daily perspective, things are looking good. From a weekly perspective, things are looking good. And it tends to look more like your textbook cup and handle, as this would be your cup. And then if I take that exact same tool, you can see that this right here would be your handle. So when we break above this range, we more often than not get a one-to-one move. But because I think this was a truly steep sell-off that didn't look like the norm, I'm going to use the low right here, and I'm going to focus on the top of this range right here. That would be another $238, which, by the way, isn't really that much from where we're currently sitting at when you look at a $238 move. I think because this is such a long, strong range, we're definitely going to go well above $470, $80, and it's far more likely we put in another $900 move to the upside, which would put us closer to around $1,200 on Solana. And again, the reason I believe this is because the longer the range, the stronger and longer the trend and the breakout. This is about a 4 to 5 year range coming in, and now we're looking strong even on that daily time frame. So let me go ahead and remove those drawings. As you can see, relative to the majority of cryptos, which have been down pretty hard and bad over the last couple of weeks, Solana has consistently been playing with this resistance right here at about $212, now above it for the first time, and seeing consistent support at that 10 and 20 EMA. Even volume, when you look at volume, is consistently been growing from below average into these breakouts. So yes, we've seen a bit of capitulation and selling, but even with these big red sell bars, notice what's happening. It's getting bought back up and coming into that prior range high territory, which leads me to believe that now it's ready to fly bare bones minimum back up to 265 to 270, and a break above there will take us into thin air territory for some highs that are previously looking unbelievable. So keep a close eye on Solana because institutional adoption is here, and even just that spot ETF event will pump this bag. Now for our third crypto, we have none other than Hyperliquid. This one might be a new name for you, but it is easily one of the fastest growing, consistently profitable DeFi ecosystems in all of crypto, mostly due to its derivatives market. And now you have major players like Paxos, Frax, and Agora competing over Hyperliquid's new stablecoin, the USDH. And the reason that these players would be in a bidding war is because they see the numbers and they know it's extremely profitable. And 95% of that, $5.5 billion in USDC, will represent the platform's stablecoin supply. Now, this ecosystem alone has generated hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue from yields on US treasuries. Do you know how many cryptos do these types of numbers? Virtually none. It's extremely rare, which is why I believe Hyperliquid is one of those tokens that will truly hit at least $100 million, but with the relative strength and it also breaking out into new all-time highs while most cryptos are down, things are looking really good. So much so that you even have Ethena, which is another major player in the stablecoin space, racing to actually be the person to back this stablecoin with BlackRock. They got with BlackRock and said, hey, this guy's extremely profitable. We want to be the ones to win this bid. BlackRock, will you join us? The largest asset and money manager in the world. So things are really heating up for this ecosystem. Now, the cool part is much of the value of this deal will also find its way into the ecosystem in terms of token buybacks and incentives. And whenever we see a dynamic like that, it's extremely difficult for the price of this crypto to go down. And, none other than the fact that BlackRock itself wants to back this deal tells you everything you need to know about its profitability and its ability to move forward into the future as a major player, which explains why this token looks so freaking dang good. Right here, we actually had a pretty nasty little hack on the Hype exchange, which caused it to dump from essentially $27 all the way down to $10. But then that dump got eaten up really quickly. And since this point in time has consistently been trending to the upside, putting in a series of higher highs and higher lows, consistently seeing growth in volume. And again, even when you see these big red bars, notice how quickly these dips get bought right back up for new all-time highs. So this is indicative of a strong uptrend that even when we see a lot of sell pressure, there are more and more buyers stepping in. Now, much of this buying is probably directly from the protocol and the team. And so that in and of itself creates a little bit of risk, but I would argue that risk is far outweighed with this bid war going on for that stable coin. This is an extremely profitable exchange and arguably an extremely profitable token that even if you would have bought off kind of close to the lows right over here at like $12 to $13, you'd still be up 350% from April. By the way, very few cryptos have put in that type of momentum and gain. And again, now this thing is in new all-time high territory, outperforming both of the cryptos that I recently mentioned. So now we're above that 10 and 20 EMA. We're in new all-time high territory. This thing is looking extra good. And by the way, if you do want to buy hype, it's not available on a ton of exchanges, but if I come over to, let's say, a coin market cap and type in hype, you'll see Hyperliquid sitting at number 11 with an $18 billion market cap. I could see this thing easily going to like a $200 billion market cap, which would actually 20x the price, or excuse me, 10x the price, putting hype closer to like $560 per token. But currently it's available not only on its own DeFi exchange, you can get it on Bybit, BitGet, MEXC, Gate.io, KuCoin, and more. So all you got to do is scroll down to see which markets it's available on in terms of sexes, which is a centralized exchange. And in terms of dexes, it's mostly available on its own exchange, Hyperliquid. So if you're outside of the United States, you can definitely use that. And now for the fourth crypto on this list, it is none other than Sui. Sui is a layer 2 blockchain built on Move by one of the best blockchain development teams in the world that literally created a new language that is able to process transactions in parallel versus sequentially, which is a completely different way of thinking and is arguably improved upon all of the things that most blockchains like Ethereum or Solana struggled with in the past, which was congestion. In times of higher activity, they would become congested or clogged. It would take longer for a transaction to get through and your fees would be higher. But Sui not only solved that problem, they also launched a gaming platform and are incentivizing all sorts of current game companies versus creating new games to use that platform and then Sui. To add to that, and we've talked about Sui at length on this channel, I made videos on it, so if you want, go and look up Bull Runners Sui, you'll be able to find those. Sui is easily one of the best cryptos in the entire space with true adoption, many use cases, and one of the best teams when it comes to engineers, TPS, you name it. But not only that, Bitcoin adoption on Sui is now accelerating as Threshold Network and Sui launch phase 2 of TBTC integration. In other words, Bitcoin is now moving to DeFi through Sui, as Bitcoin is finding its place in DeFi and taking off on Sui, with over 20% of Sui's TVL, total value locked, now in just Bitcoin DeFi assets. And even if this remains the same or grows, as the DeFi TVL on Sui grows, so will Bitcoin TVL. And with DeFi, you can do so many more things like borrow and lend, use it to build programs and incentives, and the list goes on. Now, for years, Bitcoin, the world's largest crypto asset, has been underutilized, essentially sitting idle as digital gold. On Sui, however, with TBTC, which is basically a wrapped Bitcoin that becomes locked on the Bitcoin network and is available for use as this derivative of Bitcoin, which is essentially a spot Bitcoin because the other has to be locked and held, and other BTC-Fi ecosystem deployments have opened the door to new Bitcoin liquidity options. This was not just passive inflow, but active adoption across diverse financial primitives. So here's where things get really exciting. The biggest crypto in the world by market cap is rarely used in DeFi, and we actually just looked at that when we looked at DeFi Llama. Out of the roughly 19.5 million Bitcoin currently in circulation, only a fraction is actively used in DeFi, with the majority of it concentrated on Ethereum. So Ethereum can't be the only player in the space. There need to be other players players in the space, and it looks like Sui's going to take over BTC DeFi even more so than a Solana, which could really put it on the map and get it to the size of a Solana. While Ethereum has long been the center of Bitcoin DeFi activity, Sui is rapidly gaining share by introducing Bitcoin-backed lending, trading, and yield strategies. Now, relative to the last three that we've covered, it looks like Sui has struggled to break above $4.25, consistently being sold off in May, July, and now is right sitting at around $3.60 some cents, with our all-time high coming back in January at about $5.38. But generally speaking, when in doubt, zoom out. And all we see here is a very long-term, strong uptrend. When it was first listed on Binance back in May of 2023, this sold off pretty hard. Many people got an airdrop. Maybe venture capitalists and team took a bit of profit because they were massively profitable then. But then we put in our first major low. Then our next major low came sometime in August. And you'll notice the high between the two ranges comes in just slightly higher than the prior high on listing. You could argue maybe that was a double top. But since that point in time, we've seen a higher high and higher lows. And so even if I took a trend line tool and dragged it from the very bottom of the major low in August of 2024 through these range lows right here, you can see that we've seen a consistent support right here. So yes, not only is this an uptrend, and yes, it is currently lagging the rest. We're talking Solana, Ethereum, and Hyperliquid. When this thing breaks out, it looks like it's going to break out really hard. So coming back into that daily time frame, we're at the lower end of this range, which gives us a really good risk to reward trade. But not only that, we're crossed back over the 10 and 20 EMA with, for the very first time as of recording this video for quite some time, we're seeing that 10 EMA cross over the 20 EMA, and we're putting in a series of higher highs and higher lows on a daily time frame. Zooming in on the hourly, you can see it even better, right? Higher high, higher low, higher high, guess what comes? Potentially higher low. But when we see a break above 425, this thing looks like it's ready to fly right back up to that prior all-time high. And considering the fact that this is still only a $13 billion market cap, I could easily see Sui hitting at least 10 to potentially even 15x this bull market cycle if everything goes according to that Bitcoin DeFi plan and their gaming ecosystems. This is at least a $120 billion chain. What makes me even more confident is the fact that it's still 14 by market cap, which means it is proven. So it looks like we're in buy zone opportunity now. And yes, even this short-term downtrend has broke back up to the upside with a little break right here and us crossing back over the 10 and 20 EMA. I thoroughly expect us to get back up to at least $4.25, and I would watch the price closely there, because if it breaks above there, we're flying right back up to that prior all-time high. So even if you wanted to take a small trade on something like this back up to that high, you're still up 45%. But I believe into 2026, this thing is going to hit at least $20 on the very conservative end, and on the higher end, we're looking at like $38 to $40 for almost a 1,000% gain. And finally, for that fifth crypto, which I think is a total sleeper and will likely do extremely well into the end of the year, and I'm going to paint an analysis and a comparison between Ethereum and Solana in terms of their price action and charts, is none other than Floki. And the reason I like meme coins, even though they've been down pretty heavily over the last year, because a lot of money's been flowing into these major market cap cryptos with a big name that are built in the United States because of the Trump election and all that jazz, is the fact that meme coins are not going anywhere. Dogecoin is not going anywhere. However, the majority of the opportunity in a Dogecoin it's kind of gone because it's such a large market cap. Whereas a market cap like Floki sitting at $930 million has a lot more room to grow than one that's in the many billions of dollars. So even seeing this thing 5 to 10x would be massive, considering it's also got that meme effect that looks cheap. So your average normie or someone who doesn't understand size of market would look at the price of this like being 0.00009 and say, whoa, that's cheap. I can buy millions of them for a very little amount of money. And they always think to the dollar. They think if this one hits $1, I'm going to make this much money. And that's usually what keeps people holding or diamond handing for far longer than they probably should in virtually every meme. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't with this one. What I am saying is that this is one of the strongest memes in all of crypto, and it is in the top 100 cryptos by market cap. So a meme coin even being able to be in the top 100 is already tremendous. But it's also got the majority of its supply in circulation, which means it's not going to be likely to dump by any VCs or team, and they're more focused on actual fundamentals, building things that people are going to use and use the Floki token as an incentive to get involved in this ecosystem. So not only do they have a play to earn metaverse game where you can use the token to do all sorts of things in game in terms of interactions and transactions and upgrading your NFTs and so on and so forth, but they've been building and building and building, and it's actually quite impressive. We're talking real world assets over on their TokenFi platform. We're talking a trading bot that's simple to use on Telegram. We're talking about a new Web3 identity built on .floki domains. In other words, they even have their own domains, and you can have your own Web3 identity that is completely protected. There are no middlemen. It's completely decentralized. I mean, the list goes on. I don't think I've seen any other meme coin, and very few even legitimate companies in crypto do as much as these guys have done when it comes to staking, FlokiFi, NFTs, and even partnering with MasterCard on a prepaid debit card that is supported on 8 chains and has no transaction fees. So I think Floki, from the perspective of their actual utility and their partnerships and the amount of money that they spend to build and grow this ecosystem, is bar none the best in all of the meme space, and even arguably against many of the major market cap cryptos. So when we take a look at the price action, it looks quite interesting and arguably looks very similar to that of Ethereum. As you can see, back in 2021, we put in what? An all-time high. Then we dumped extremely hard and put in what looks like a cup. Then we had 1, 2, 3 touches of that range, similar to that $4,000 range on Ethereum. Now, Ethereum is obviously leading and this is lagging. So yes, this has fallen a bit behind Ethereum, but I think it's a lot of the times just money flows into the biggest and the best. And then when those things do well, what happens? We start to experience an altcoin season, a meme coin season. A lot of the profits from those major market cap cryptos rotate into things like this that are bound to perform well, just based on the fundamentals. So you notice it dumped really hard here, similar to that of Ethereum. Let's look at the chart of Ethereum, for example. Look at this. Pumped to all-time high in 2021, dumped really hard, 3 separate touches, broke back down for a major range low below the prior lows, and somewhere around here is where Floki is, and here's what happens next. It pumps really hard and breaks for a new all-time high. So right now, Ethereum is leading, but when you look at a Floki, it's almost the exact same chart pattern to that of a Solana and an Ethereum. So I thoroughly expect this thing to pump right back up to that prior all-time high, and even this right here would be a 200% gain. But when we take that into consideration, it's highly likely this thing is going to go to at least 0.002 for a 2000% gain. And I can't guarantee that because I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know the future, but just above that prior high of the neckline right here, or at the top of that cup and handle, this really wouldn't be an insane gain. It'd only be about a 600% gain. It's just you stand far more to gain by buying at this key level right now. Now, why would you buy at that key level? I'm not saying that you should. This isn't financial advice, but I've seen these types of patterns before. The longer the range, the stronger and longer the breakout. First and foremost, we are now seeing the start of a new uptrend from this low right here. You can see that we're consistently being supported at this trend line. We have a series of higher highs and higher lows. This high being higher than this high, this low being higher than this low. The fact that we're trending right back up to the prior resistance is very normal and healthy. And also I'm seeing a major contraction in volume, right? From the breakout highs right here, you've seen consistent decline in volume. And whenever we see a major decline in volume into a new uptrend back up to the prior range highs, this is indicative of a contraction, where in markets, whenever we see contractions, what follows a contraction is an expansion. Then we see an expansion in volume. What's interesting is we saw the exact same thing here. Notice contraction, expansion. Then we saw a contraction right here into another major expansion where the volume here was far greater than the volume back here. Well, look at what's super interesting. Expansion, contraction, and I'm willing to bet on a breakout the volume is going to be even greater or bigger than it was back here in March of 2024 during a true meme coin cycle. So right now is a great time to buy the dip on something like a Floki back up to the prior range high and arguably into a new all-time high. And by the way, the market cap is at a key level where not only do we see enough adoption and traction, but it's not so big that it can't grow far more. Now that's it for the video, folks. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and also go on over to altcoinpro.com to check out Altcoin Pro University. We've had nearly 1,000 members for almost a year now, paying us $97 a month for access to this community, this platform, the courses, our altcoin picks, access to my live calls on technical analysis, where I teach you everything you need to know about charts, candlesticks, indicators, and more. And yes, you can ask questions live. We show you how to get access to airdrops and even take advantage of our quick win DeFi yields. Every single week, our expert DeFi Mo shares all sorts of very safe and strong yield earning opportunities. Actually, the majority of our members now take advantage of these by putting the crypto that they already own or sit on to work for them, so they can earn more than enough to not only pay for the $97 a month fee, but also put it to work in all sorts of different opportunities in the crypto space. This is like doubling down on your crypto without actually having to borrow. If anything, you're just putting your crypto to work to earn interest or yield. This is essentially what market makers do. You play the role of a market maker, and we show you step by step how to do it. It might seem a little bit overwhelming or confusing. Totally fine, but that's why you're here. You want to take advantage of everything crypto has to offer. For example, this one right here is literally just a USDC or YUSD. In other words, it's just all US dollars in crypto that would earn you 26 to 52%. So if you're already sitting on a stable coin, this might be the play for you. Another one right here using SUI and USDC, one that we just talked about, holding SUI and the dollar would net you about 20% per year. And no, these don't last forever. We usually show you how to rotate week by week or month by month so you can take advantage of the best yields, because not all of these last forever. They never do. The goal here is the incentive of this ecosystem to get you to add liquidity to their platform. So incentives eventually run out, which is why we offer a weekly yield. And all it would take is between 15 to 30 minutes max once weekly. So imagine putting in an entire daily 8-hour or sometimes a 16-hour shift per year in order to earn between 20 to 50% yearly yield. And the list goes on. We offer so many opportunities. We have so many client reviews. I talk about them all the time on our channel. If any of that sounds interesting to you, head on over to Altcoin Pro to check it out. And by the way, if you can't get access to any one of these DeFi yield quick wins within 14 days to put your money to work for you to pay for the membership, then go ahead and ask for a refund. We'll give it to you. We're not going to throw a fit. We believe that this is your one-stop shop. This is the best educational platform on the planet when it comes to crypto, tools, training, and resources. Thanks so much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.